best actresses alive, and I could tell you like a half dozen of my favorite performances. But yeah, I mean, she was the star fast on to Ridgemont High. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, I love Cameron Crowe. And it was one of those things, I mean, I didn't want it to feel meta. It's not sort of winking at the audience, but I think it's one of those things where it's, hopefully she feels completely believable as Sutter, as our main character's mom, and she gives a great performance. And yeah, if you happen to be a fan of that movie, you realize that it's our way of acknowledging a lineage and a respect for films that we admire.
Well, it's funny because there are a couple of these movies now in the last couple of years that are kind of throwbacks to those old movies. But I think these new movies, like your movie and like The Perks of Being a Wallflower last year, I think they're way better than those other movies. I really do. I think those movies were fantastic for their time, and they have things that we know we all connect with. But these movies are much more. They feel much more real and much more organic, and the characters feel like people that I can really, really relate to.
Yeah.
And I think that's. I mean, it's an argument between older and younger generations, but I think that a lot of the new movies that people like yourself are making really are taking what they loved and bringing something new into it that feels fresher.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that. I'm glad you guys need to keep this up.
Well, I'll take that. Thanks. With all respect to the memory of John Hughes and Cameron, who are awesome.
They're all awesome.
Yeah,
But, it was a different time then.
Yeah.
And now studios seem to, at least with the whole independent thing over the last, 15, 20 years, really embrace movies that are grounded in reality. And people like yourself and, the screenwriters here, and the same thing with Perks, realize that they can make movies about these periods of time that still have the comedy, that still are, like you can connect with these characters, but they feel real, and that's better. It just is better.
I like it.
To kind of piggyback on the reality of it, alcoholism has been 3 of your films. Like, it's a major portion of your films. Can you talk about how you tackle that subject, and do you ever fear that you go too far in allowing characters to, especially in his character, did you ever want to step back and say, we have to have you kind of have a little bit stronger fall because of the actions you're going through, the choices you're making in the movie?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, for myself, I always operate from a place of almost like the way I think a documentarian would approach character, not necessarily in the filmmaking itself, but I try to not judge the characters. I try to not make them look like jerks. I try to be a great advocate for them, and I try to depict them in such a way that if they were real people and their families were seeing this depiction of them, where they would feel like I'd given them a fair shake, coming from a place of real agency and where I really am rooting for all of these characters. So that's really where I come from. I don't really like films that are morality tales or that judge or that are social issue movies. And first and foremost, it's about an issue. I think issues should be entrenched in characters and relationships and story. So, I have never met a person who is a completely clean slate, who has everything figured out, who doesn't, who just can get through their day and like they're loved perfectly by their parents and have a great relationship with their parents and with their wife and their kids, and it's all great. Like, I've seen some bad studio movies where those are some facsimile of real people. Those aren't any of the people that I've ever met. And I guess sort of, the scar tissue of life and sort of the elaborate system of coping mechanisms that we create for ourselves to try to get through, our day-to-day life are kind of really fascinating to me. That's more fascinating to me than story in some cases. Like, for me, I'd rather just watch a really interesting character than to watch a really cheesy story. Hopefully you have a good story and a really complicated character.
So you said you're not interested in social issues movies yet. You are about to make Rodham, right? I can't not ask a question about that with all the controversy today with Reince Priebus saying he's not going to let NBC and CNN, do debates over it. So, what is it that interests you about Hillary Clinton?
What interests me about this screenplay, which it's not a screenplay that I wrote, a guy named Young Kim wrote it, and was that it's not a cradle to the grave biopic. Most of those, that start when they're 5 and they see a spider and then like it cuts to 75. Like, to me, they're so reductive, and it's like trying to compress an entire human life into 2 hours. I find to be like a highlight reel of a life, and I get no emotional investment in it. In this case, like, the story is a very, very specific time in her life in the early 70s. A couple years out of Yale Law, when she was, part of this kind of rock star group of intentionally bipartisan group of around 50 lawyers that John Doerr oversaw, but very intentionally Republican, Democrat.
She was a Goldwater girl.
She was a Goldwater girl, yeah. And she was paired up mostly with Bill Weld, who became the Republican governor of Massachusetts.
Right.
They were trying to create a legal foundation with which they could impeach Richard Nixon after Watergate. And, it wasn't partisan. It wasn't, there was a breach of justice in the White House. In fact, it was probably more of an imperative for Republicans to make sure that he was brought to justice because he gave a bad name for Republicans.
Right.
But the story is really about her at 25, 26, balancing this career she was one of only 3 female lawyers there, balancing this world where there's a huge amount of gender inequality with her relationship with her boyfriend, Bill, who was in Arkansas, starting to run for office. So for me, it was it didn't even matter that this is a portrait of young people who have become famous. It's actually about a young, brilliant, driven woman who's choosing between love and career. And it's a story about the sacrifices that any relationship, that couples are always asked to make, but definitely women are always asked to make.
Right.
So it's a character study. It's not a partisan film. It's not trying to get someone elected. It's not trying to be a hit job. I could care less. People, there's so much attention because she's obviously a very famous figure.
Who's probably running for president.
Yeah, and people want to talk about Lewinsky or Whitewater or Benghazi. It's I could care less. Our movie, the moment that Nixon stepped down, our movie's over.
Right.
So it's have fun telling those stories. I don't want to engage with it, and honestly, an op-ed piece in the paper is better to engage with it.
But did he write the script? Obviously he isn't writing the script as a partisan thing.
Yeah.
But I think the reason for at least the people on the Republican side that it's all convenient is that it's all going to be coming out, so close to elections.
Yeah.
Is your movie shooting for 2014, 2015 to come out, or?
The hope, I think, is Young wrote the script. It wound up on the blacklist, at the end of last year, best unproduced screenplays. And it's a fantastic script. It was the first draft. Slowly been, he's kind of rewriting it, kind of slowly going through it with him to make it as good as it could possibly be.
Right.
And it has all the burdens of any movie where it has to be you have to be emotionally invested in real characters, and then it's going to be scrutinized by the political right and left. So it has that, but I would hope that we would shoot the next year to year and a half. I think that's all of our hope. If everything comes together, yeah. And then when it comes out, then there's a lot of other things that are totally beyond our control.
Right.
But
I'm looking forward to it because she's a fascinating figure. That should be the thing.
Yeah.
There's a reason why nobody talks about anybody else being the next president right now.
Definitely. The way I see it is sort of for me at least, a good biopic. If that's feels almost like a dirty term, but that being said, teen film is a dirty term too for a lot of people. So it's it can be really good.
Well, you're doing it in the same respect that they just did Lincoln. That was the brilliant thing about
Lincoln. Good Night, Good Luck. Mel,
Good Luck,
whatever.
Yeah.
For me, it's almost like that rule that you hear about science fiction and horror movies, where it's if for them to really work and really resonate, they should work even if you remove that supernatural element.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or Blade Runner. It's sci-fi, but at the end of the day, it's just a film noir kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's it really needs to work regardless of whether she went on to become a public figure.
Yeah, that's what my dad said about Brokeback Mountain. Think about it if they took the gay out. Does it still work, Nathan? Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Gay, straight, whatever. It's a great story. Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
What was, I saw this with one of my girlfriends, and immediately when the lights went back up, it was, I love that she had no makeup on.
Yeah.
Was that your choice, or was her choice, or, it wasn't even no makeup look, it was no makeup.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to make a huge impression on any kids that see this movie.
Yeah. It was part of the design that I wanted for all the actors. Miles doesn't either, the actors don't. And it was part of the earliest conversations that I had with the actors before they were cast was, hey, the goal here is not to do an approximation of adolescence. It's sort of, in many ways, it's to really be what adolescent life is like for a lot of people in public high schools in Georgia or Texas or Illinois or wherever, where you don't go to school with a bunch of Abercrombie & Fitch models wearing skinny jeans who are perfectly made up, who have cheekbones, and I don't want to perpetuate stereotypes or just false notions of beauty or masculinity that are totally warped that make kids hate themselves. Honestly, I want to make a movie that people like and can see themselves in. Because there's always that arm's length distance when you feel like, God, I'll never look like that.
Yeah.
It's no, I don't think that's how you make a film that gets its hooks in you and draws you in. So, I talked to Miles and Shailene and all the actors about that from early on. and they were totally gung ho, like 100%. I mean, they couldn't have. I mean, Shailene and Miles are brilliant actors, great dramaturgs. They understood these kids. They didn't want to do that either. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, like Miles, like neither of them had ever done a sex scene before, so they were really nervous about it. We talked about it endlessly, so they knew exactly how we would do it. And they were comfortable with it. And I remember Shailene was like, "Miles, you better not work out. I want you to have a beer gut." You better. And I was like, "I gotta have a six-pack." She's like, "No." She wouldn't let him work out. So no, they were like, there's no vanity. Like they're really, really intelligent. It's the same approach that like a really smart, much older actor that I'm sure Jack Nicholson would bring to a performance, or Kate Winslet, or whomever. Pick the adult actor. Like really great actors have great careers. I think are great dramaturgs. They pick the right roles. They pick the right scripts, and they pick roles that they know they can do something to. They know the challenges of it and how they can hit it out of the park. Miles and Shailene are at the beginning of their career, but they have those instincts, and part of that is just fierce intelligence and dedication to honesty and no vanity. So they were great. I mean, they were collaborators, and I learned from them.
What are your, I guess to wrap this up, what are your hopes for this movie?
Man, my hopes are that the movie gets discovered and seen. We obviously, in theaters.
I mean, it's a limited release right now, but it's, opening wider.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we'll never have the marketing budget. We can't carpet bomb the world with billboards and TV spots and make people just, we can't be the Coca-Cola Nike logo that you can't escape, of movies. Yeah. Like, it's a movie that really requires good word of mouth. Yeah. You know what I mean? From festival screenings, from Twitter, from whatever. People that see it and tell their friends about it. Those are the best movies when they work, when you feel like you've discovered it, when you feel like someone has told you something because it's good, not because they're genuinely trying to sell you something. I think that's all of our hope for. We really, everyone involved in the movie believes in it. I mean, this weekend, like me and the writers will be out doing Q&As in different cities around the country. The actors have really promoted it. Like, we all believe in it and want to see. Personally, as a film goer, I want to see more movies like this, and I want to see studios make movies like this. And I think if it can be successful, they will. And it's, it just comes down to that. If it makes money, and people see an opportunity to make money off movies like this, they will make more movies like this that realistically depict teenagers, that respect their emotional inner lives, where they don't have to have superpowers and be vampires or werewolves.
And they have, and this summer has shown. I mean, with Kings of Summer, Mud, this movie. Yeah. I mean, they've done it, and those have been most of the better movies of this year. Yeah. So,
back to reality.
We'll see what studios are making in the next 2 years.
And it's the same thing with adults.
Yep.
I mean, and children. I mean, the opening of Before Midnight. I don't know if you saw Before Midnight yet, but
I've seen it 3 times. They interviewed Linklater at South Park. Love the movie. Love it.
That opening scene, as a father, I watch it and I'm like, I almost cried just in the first 10 minutes. Like, I was like, oh.
I mean, that movie, man. Yeah, that guy's a genius, and those movies are like a gift. I think.
Yeah, so. I agree.